Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. Oh, he hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies lost to the Brooklyn Nets for the second time in less than a week. And to talk about it, I have Chris Herrington from the Daily Memphian. Chris, good morning. How's it going?
What's up? It's sort of a sin against basketball that we got the big breakout Zach Edey game.
Yeah.
Two highlights of the season, not just for the Grizzlies, but for the entire NBA. And it has to come in a 2-point loss, right?
Yeah, I guess I could have. Did I bury the lead? Yes, the Grizzlies lost, but Zach Edey breakout game. Zach Edey with a monstrous performance. This is the stuff we were dreaming about. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks. He was 11 out of 12 from the field. And yeah, Ja Morant, 2 magical 360 layups, but it's not enough to beat Dennis Schroder, who continues to destroy the Grizzlies. I think Dennis Schroder is Grizz killer number 1. I know CJ McCollum flirted with it. Like CJ McCollum's career scoring average against the Grizzlies is higher than against any other team. I blame Dennis Schroder specifically because in my mind, we entered a dark timeline for the Grizzlies where everything went off the rails. Is a game against the Lakers. The Grizzlies were ahead by double digits. This is the year after the 56 win season. This is the season where Steven Adams is about to get hurt. I think he gets hurt next game. And then like Brandon Clark is hurt after, but the Grizzlies are winning by like 10. They actually were the only team in the NBA that season to not blow a double-digit lead up until that point. We were having a watch party in Nashville. It was a game in LA. This is the Shannon Sharp yelling at Dylan Brooks.
Oh yeah.
This is the what's the pedestrian comment? He called Shannon Sharp. Was it a regular pedestrian?
I think it's a regular pedestrian.
Yeah. So Dylan Brooks calls Shannon Sharp the regular pedestrian. Anyway, all this stuff happens, but it ends up the Grizzlies blow the game. They blow the lead. Dennis Schroder steals the ball from Desmond Bane at the end to win it. And up until that point, it'd been like, we're the young, hot team. We still had one of the best records in the NBA, one of the best net ratings in the NBA. After that, it all kind of has gone a little bit downhill. And we're still a little bit suffering from it. I mean, we're right now still playing without Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart. And so I blame Dennis Schroder. He's Grizz killer number 1 for me.
I got to say, I remember whichever start, Shannon Sharp and Dylan Brooks and T. Morant from that moment much more than I remember Dennis Schroder.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take your word for it that he
it was a game like Desmond Bane's. My memory is Desmond Bane's holding the ball, expecting to get fouled. But Schroder, much like he did against Zach Edey in a Zach Edey post-up, where Schroder runs from behind and just takes the ball from Zach Edey, Schroder steals the ball. I think gets an and one and puts the Lakers ahead. Grizzlies lose the game. Steven Adams and Brandon Clark all get injured within the next few weeks. We've never been the same. At least I've never been the same. Maybe other people have moved on.
We haven't been the same. I don't want to derail the conversation. But let me throw a trivia question out at you.
Uh-huh.
You may have already looked at this. You may have this at the tip of your tongue. I wrote about this in a column this week, which may or may not be up as this publishes. Top 4 players for the Grizzlies through these first 8 games and total minutes played.
I know one is Santi Aldama.
Santi Aldama was number 1.
So what was it? Top 4?
Yeah. Ja Morant is 5th.
Okay. I would say Jake Laravia is up there.
Number 2.
Yeah. Now Scottie Pippen Jr.
3rd.
Oh, I'm killing it. 4th. Yeah. Let's see. Jaren missed some games. I guess I'll vote Jaren.
Jaylen Wells.
Jaylen Wells.
If you had taken this 15-man roster and stipulated at the start of training camp, all 15 players will be healthy. What is your preferred pecking order? What's your first team, second team, third team?
Yeah.
Santi Aldama's second team, and Scottie Pippen, Jaylen Wells, Jake Laravia are probably all third team. They are playing, they're giving even more minutes to players even deeper on the depth chart to start this season than they did last season.
Yeah, that's incredible. And, I think some people would point to that being bad luck. I still kind of highlight it as this was a path that could have happened when you built the squad the way you built the squad. Like we've been through this so many times that I've stopped being like, oh man, if only Marcus Smart could be available. If only Luke Kennard could play some minutes. Where's Luke Kennard, Chris?
It's a good question. I had people asking me, why isn't Luke Kennard on this injury update?
Yeah.
It's like, he's supposed to be beyond that. He's supposed to be like ready to play any second now.
Right. Like
I keep waiting for the dramatic doubtful upgrade on the injury report, and it has not happened.
I went out on a limb on an episode, the episode that came out on Monday morning. I recorded that on Sunday. I went out on a limb and I'm like, I guess it's probably the Luke Kennard doubtful game. Cause a week ago they're like, oh yeah, full practice. You just got to get up to his conditioning up. Oh man. Yeah. So he didn't make the injury report.
The Grizzlies have very long ramps.
Yeah. They're ramping up.
Yeah, they're ramping up. And these are very, very long.
Here's good news. Jaren Jackson Jr. played a season high in minutes against the Nets. Of course, the team lost by 2, and Ja Morant and Jaren only played 32.5 minutes, but that's a season high for Jaren. We should be happy, right?
It is funny. It's almost like in Grizzlies basketball, 32 is the new 40.
Yeah.
And so people are like, oh, great, 32, 33. And people don't complain. And then you look at other box, and I'm not even saying they're wrong to do this. To me, it's an open question. Yeah. But if you look at other box scores around the league, or look at the one the Grizzlies played in last night,
right?
And that's had 3 players who played more than anybody for the Grizzlies.
The last loss against the Nets, I think Ja and Jaren were at 28 minutes, 29 minutes. So, hey, we increased it. We're up a little bit. Now, Chris, they did shorten the rotation. I mean, second half, they played 8 guys.
Right.
8-man rotation. And we had, 6 players played 31 minutes or more, which is honestly that's odd on its own. And then Edey was 7th with like 28, 29 minutes.
Who did not play in the second half?
Jay Huff.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Huff snuff in the rotation, taken out. I think some people watching the game, at least in my orbit, in my Grizzlies Slack channel, they weren't particularly pleased with the closing lineups that Scottie Pippen Jr. and Jake Laravia were out there. I had no issue. I'm like, who else are you going to play? Those guys are playing well.
I had no problem. Scottie Pippen and Jake Laravia were having better games than Jaylen Wells and Santi Aldama. So I got no issue with that, actually. And I think Laravia has become, among the fan base, the most underrated guy on the roster. Yeah, like he's been helping them in his minutes, and so I had no issue. If you want to take issue with stuff in that game, those decisions of the 2 players to to fill out the lineup was not a problem I had.
I think Laravia, he's a guy who right now like stats support that they're winning the minutes he's on, but I don't think this is one where you have to like squint and be like, well, that doesn't match the eye test. Like the eye test is he's playing well. He obviously has some stinkers, like the last Nets game, 1 for 10 shooting, but like he rebounds well. He's defending well. He's actually passing the ball well.
The disconnect with him, I think, is that his quality play is not tied to shooting and scoring. It's tied to everything else.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the disconnect comes in between like the actual play he is giving the team and sort of how it's being perceived. Yeah.
Also, I think fair question among the fan base. Why is Jake Laravia second in minutes on the team, and then you decline his 4th-year option?
I wrote about that in the same column this week. I think that was that had become a decision that could reasonably have gone either way. I don't know if I would have made the decision the Grizzlies made, so I'm not here to endorse it. I think I might have gone the other way with it. But I sort of understand it because to me as a player, Laravia has become sort of like taller Conchar a little bit. And you look at the pattern with Conchar where they signed the extension with Conchar and you thought, hey, $6 million a year, rising cap for a back end of the rotation guy. That's pretty good value. But what if he's not in your rotation,
Yeah.
And I think when you look at, if you look at this team at full strength, as good as Laravia has been relatively this season, if you're projecting forward, he's not as important to the franchise as Gigi Jackson or as Vince Williams or as Jaylen Wells, much less Desmond Bane. And you project it out, and he's probably not one of your top 10 guys. And they just signed over the last 2 seasons, they have signed 5 potential rotation level players for half the money of Jake Laravia's contract option. And so you have Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson, Scottie Pippen, Jaylen Wells, Jay Huff. And if you're the Grizzlies, you might look at that and say, maybe you have too much faith in your ability to keep doing this. You may look at it and say, if we can sign players we think are better, in four out of those 5 cases, maybe players we think are better than Jake Laravia for half of that money, why are we signing Jake Laravia for $5 billion?
The analogy struck me. It's like they decided that Kroger brand was good enough. Why are we paying name brand? Why are we paying $5 million for a player when we can go out and sign these guys on these 4-year deals for $2.5 million,
right?
And save some bucks that way. So I don't know. The issue for me.
Well, in this analogy, they're saying the Kroger brand is actually better than the name brand.
That's fine too. Yeah, right. I like this particular brand. Kroger brand mac and cheese, disgusting. They haven't been able to fix whatever that is. The issue for me is also just, well, it seems like you're letting this guy probably go for nothing if he's any good.
Right.
I would rather probably hang on to it. But let's talk about Zach Edey. Then we can get back into the weeds of the roster again. Zach Edey, he had the second highest field goal percentage in a game in Grizzlies franchise history for a player with at least 12 field goal attempts. Number 1, Chris, Tony Allen.
Tony Allen, sure.
The 12 of course, the 12 for 12 game against the Lakers. It's not weird. I'm obsessed with Tony Allen. So I remember that game. Outraged still they lost a game where Kobe Bryant was outscored by Tony Allen. But 11 for 12, most of them dunks, but good job for the team finding him in the paint. And honestly, good job by Edey. I felt like
that's what you want.
Yeah.
You want Zach Edey dunking the basketball.
He did make a 3-pointer. He pulled off his first, what do you call it? The combo meal, like the Jaren Jackson Jr. play, the block, and then the subsequent trailing 3-pointer.
Well, the supersized combo meal.
Yeah, so Edey had a great game, also getting offensive rebounds. For me, it's all about what I wanted to see from him is him moving guys out of the way and getting the misses, getting Ja Morant's misses, and then dunking the back in.
He was comfortable and aggressive. He was comfortable playing with force on both ends of the floor in that game. You could see it in the first 3 minutes in a way that he had not been to this point in the regular season. And I don't think it was surprising. You've sort of been waiting for something like that, and it's not going to happen every night. But he is capable of being a force around the basket on both ends of the floor. Like that. There's nothing fluky about that. The dude is 7'5", and he's got pretty good touch, and he's strong. And I think it's been a matter of him of getting reps and getting comfortable and all of that. And so, I don't think that's the last game. I don't know about 11 for 12. I don't think that's the last 2010 multiple blocks game he's going to have this season.
Yeah. So he sets career highs in all those marks, obviously. But the 4 blocks, amazing to see. More than he had on the season coming into this game. It seemed like he was actually adjusting, where like he got beat off the dribble, 4 layups, then he adjusted and actually got the blocks. Of course, Schroder got him at the very end. Can't really blame him there. Schroder gets everyone. He's incredibly adept at that. But yeah, Edey played, I thought, really, really well, obviously. He now, by the way, is the number 1 rookie scorer in the NBA. Coming into the game, it was Jaylen Wells. Jaylen Wells is now dipped down to 9.8 points per game. Edey is at 11 points per game on the season. By the way, the only other rookie in Grizzlies franchise history to hit those marks in a game, at least 25, 12, and 4 blocks, is Pau Gasol. He had a 27, 14, and 4. Beyond Zach and his play, and obviously he got to close the game for the first time in a close game. Ja continues, I think, playing well. And again, we wasted those 360s. What's your overall impression, let's say, of Ja and the team? What's your overall impression right now being 4-4 and Ja looking good, but the team's kind of obviously struggling with injury and just 500?
I got mixed feelings about the performance. I think on one hand, as I was pointing out earlier, they're playing even more minutes for guys even deeper on the depth chart than it did a year ago.
Yep.
A year ago, through 8 games, the top 3 minutes played guys on the team were Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart. They were 1 and 7. Right now, the top 4 minutes played guys on the team are Santi Aldama, Jake Laravia, Scottie Pippen, Jaylen Wells, and they're 4 and 4.
Yep.
And so I do think that speaks to they have better functional depth from top to bottom on the roster than they did a year ago. But they've played against a pretty weak schedule, weaker than even maybe you thought because of Milwaukee and Philadelphia. And so, you beat Utah, you beat a couple teams in disarray. I think my hope for the team is that they don't look up in March. My hope is that what they're doing works, that they keep these guys fresh, they get players back, guys stay healthy, and they do what they've done in the past where everything starts clicking in December, January, and you run off a big streak. Because if it gets tight late in the season, you're going to look back and say, if we just put the foot on the gas just a little bit, just a little bit more, close loss against Chicago, Ja out, Bane and Jaren limited minutes. Close loss against Brooklyn, Ja and Jaren limited minutes. Close loss, 2-point loss at Brooklyn, not limited minutes, but not the kind of minutes every other team in the league is playing their stars when they're trying to win a close game.
Yep.
To me, you don't necessarily win all 3 of those if you play it a little bit differently, but you probably win 1 or 2 of them. And so my hope is they don't look back and say we frittered away some games we didn't need to fritter away and it really cost us. But I think nothing that's happened to this point, if anything, I'm more encouraged about what the team can be this season than I was before the season. I think the potential is there for this team to be easily a top 4 team in the West if everything comes together. Is everything going to come together?
Yeah.
I think Ja's been fantastic.
Yeah, Ja has been good. He right now leads the NBA in assists per minute. He's at a career high, I think 9.7 or 9.8. Of course, he's playing, 28 minutes a game. So
these are also high quality assists. I was going to write about this and I ran out of space. So maybe I'll revisit it later in the week and if I update it. His more than 50 going into last night's game. I haven't looked at it since last night. More than 50% of his assists were for dunks and layups. And that's not an easy stat to grab. And what is that normal? Is that whatever? But I did look at James Harden and Trae Young, who are the top 2 assist guys in the league, to see if it was comparable, and it wasn't. Like their assists are under 50% in terms of that. And so Ja's creating layups and dunks like all over the place.
Yeah.
As a passer, I think the 3-point shooting hasn't come around, but he's scoring efficiently. He seems to be playing a little bit different style. I mean, you had the fancy layups last night, but he's not going quite as hard right to the rim. It seems like maybe he's trying to preserve his body a little bit. But I think as an orchestrator, as a playmaker, I think he's been dazzling this season.
So right now he's averaging about 21 points and close to 10 assists, which is a change statistically from what he's been in his career. You'd think of him as like a 25 point per game scorer.
I think that is a better job. I think that balance of scoring and assists to me is a better John Morant.
So his turnovers are very, very high. The team turnovers are very, very high. The team right now, I think bottom 5 or 6 or something like 24th, 25th. I lost where I put it. But like you said on the alley-oops, I tracked this before the previous game. I think Ja has like 30 something turnovers on the year. 12 to 14 or so are on missed alley-oops. So like he's getting all the alley-oops. I have no problem with this. Keep throwing the alley-oops.
He talked about this a little bit after the Milwaukee game. It may have been a response to my question. I don't remember. I was in the scrum, but he said basically, because that game he had, I think 14 assists in that game and 8 of them were alley-oop dunks.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm playing free. And someone said something about turnovers. He said, when I'm playing free, there are going to be turnovers.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and I agree with him. I'm like, who cares? Like if you're playing in a way that's going to generate that kind of offense and those kind of moments where you can just explode and pull away from teams, that's something that didn't happen in that game. There was not like the 3-minute stretch where Ja just like takes the game apart, as a playmaker. That didn't happen in that game at Brooklyn. And that's one of the reasons they lost that game. But some of these games, there's been stretches where it's like, he almost like just takes the game in his hands and pulls it apart. And I'm for him playing with that level of freedom and that level of looseness, actually.
Yeah, I kind of thought the way the game started that Ja was taking it into the paint and scoring over and over and over. I thought maybe we were going to get one of those big scoring games from Ja. But like, I guess give credit to Brooklyn. I mean, it wasn't like a game where you felt like the Grizzlies blew it. The Grizzlies missed a lot of makeable shots, particularly in the fourth quarter.
We've talked about the minutes, but the number one thing in that game was the 3-point shooting disparity. They just had a terrible shooting night.
And I thought, even with the 3-point shooting disparity, I thought the Nets, actually played a pretty good defensive game, and maybe Edey ate because of it. Where they're like,
right.
we're gonna allow certain things, but like the Grizzlies never had a big lead. Their biggest lead in the second half was 3 points. It was a low scoring game. Going to the 3-point disparity. So in the first game of the season against the Jazz, Grizzlies were bombing away from three. And we're like, all right, they're going to take a lot of 3-pointers. Since then, not at all. The Grizzlies right now are 27th in 3-pointers made per game. They're 25th in 3-point attempts. Some of that is Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama, don't look now. 28% from three on the season. After preseason in the first 3 games where he was well over 50%, he's been 2 for 22 in the past 5 games. I'm not blaming him for the final shot of the game where Schroder knocked the ball away from Jaws. Santi has to shoot a weird fadeaway, but like Santi stopped hitting 3-pointers. The team, beyond not hitting them, isn't even taking them. What do you make of the 3-point appetite or the 3-point volume that the team's taking?
It's interesting. Obviously, the making part in particular is not unrelated to having your 2 best shooters unavailable, and Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard. But I don't know if that fully explains the reduction in the taking, right? I think it does suggest an offense not fully working the way they intend for it to work, because I think they intend for it to generate a lot of 3-point shots. That is what they want. Now, in some of these games, like if Josh creating like dunks like every time down the floor, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. Like against Milwaukee. But I do think at one point in that game, and this I noticed this may have been at halftime or something like that. I was looking at the box score, and the Grizzlies were like, John Morant was scoring highly efficient 2-point baskets. Zach Edey was scoring like highly efficient 2-point baskets, but the Brooklyn Nets were doubling them up from the 3-point line and the free throw line at one point. And it was just like, it was really a battle of like 3 against 2, and they were losing the math equation on that. I think on the whole of the game, it looks a little different than that. But at one point in the game, that's basically what it was. The Grizzlies are scoring 2 points every time down the floor. The Nets are scoring 3. Guess what? You lose that, right?
Right.
Because they weren't even getting and ones with the 2s. It was just like,
that was the highlight. Wasn't it the highlight? Both of Ja's highlight plays followed by 3-pointers for the Nets? I think it might have been, at least it felt that way. If it's not true, at least felt that way. No, but like that was the thing. We were like, oh, John made one of the best plays ever. Oh, Cam Johnson hit a 3-pointer. That's worth a lot. That's worth more points. Let's take a break, Chris, and we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about this game and the upcoming schedule and also the injury issues. All right, so one of the things, like you've highlighted for this season with the Grizzlies being 4-4, is the guys getting the most minutes are not the players we would intend to have the most minutes. Unfortunately, outside of Luke Kennard, there seems to be no immediate relief on the way. And also, the Grizzlies' schedule gets a little bit tough. The Grizzlies play the Lakers at home on Wednesday. Friday night, you play the Wizards. Hopefully you can take care of business there. By the way, if you're in the Nashville area, I'm hosting a watch party at Noble's Beer Hall this Friday night, November 8th, for that Wizards Grizzlies game. Come on out. I'm going to give you some prizes if you show up. Then there's like this West Coast trip. The NBA Cup starts. You have to play at the Lakers, at the Warriors. You got to play the Nuggets twice in a row. You got to play the 76ers that probably will be more at full strength by that point. Like, I don't know if we'll have Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, or Vince Williams Jr. for any of those. Are we hopeful that anyone's going to be back for like those next, next 7-8 games?
Well, I think, John Conchar and Luke Kennard should be back this week.
Who?
Hope on those 2, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So you start with that, which will help a little bit. I would assume they will both play this week. It'd be surprising if they didn't. We've been surprised before by that. Mm-hmm. The other 3, I week to week could mean anything, really. I was happy to see. I would like for them to come earlier, but I was happy to see a sense of finality on the Vince Williams thing. Not a will be reevaluated, but a will return. That is good to see. This team, I think, looks a lot different if Desmond Bane and Vince Williams are out there, much less more so than the other guys. The core truth of this team remains, and it has been, I think, from before the season started, how many games are you going to get with John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson? And in terms of having those players all available to both start and end a game, it's been 1. So 1 out of 8, and that percentage will not get there for the Grizzlies. So I mean, that's the question to me. I thought on the Bane thing, like I was braced for something worse than week to week with Bane and Smart, Bane in particular. And so I didn't see that injury report as good news, certainly, but I saw it as sort of the absence of what could have been bad news. And so if they can get, I would hope maybe get Bane back in a couple weeks. We'll see. I don't think a week to week means 1 week though. So
when Luke Kennard returns, which we're acting like is soon,
it should be.
Specifically, Chris, whose minutes is he going to take? Because over the past several games, we have Jaylen Wells, Jake Laravia, and Scottie Pippen Jr. all playing heavy minutes, all playing around like 30 minutes a game. I think he's taking one of their minutes. So if he takes minutes,
I don't think they exit the rotation, because I think Taylor Jenkins wants to play 10 or 11 if he can. But you don't need to be playing Jaylen Wells and Scottie Pippen 30 plus minutes. And so I don't think a Luke Kennard return would change the starting lineup they've used the past couple games. I suspect they will stick with the Jaylen Wells, Santi Aldama on the wing. But like, if you had other options, Jaylen Wells would not have been playing 33 minutes in that game against the Nets, where he wasn't really very good. And so I think I'm fine with Jaylen Wells playing 18 to 20 unless he's playing well, and the same thing with some of these other guys. And so, but I don't think Luke Kennard's going to be playing 30 minutes either. So I think it's easy to find 20 minutes for Luke Kennard in the current rotation is what I would say.
So you're not in the Jaylen Wells needs to start when Marcus Smart and Vince Williams Jr. are healthy camp?
No, I do think Jaylen Wells, and it's the kind of thing where everything's focused on what happened in the last game, right? Yeah. So I don't want to overreact to probably his worst game of the season, maybe Jaylen Wells. I think Jaylen Wells is very interesting. Of all the third string guys I wrote about who've sort of popped up, I don't know if he's been the best. He probably hasn't, but I think his emergence has been the most meaningful. I do think that, more so than Pippen or Jay Huff or whatever. And I think he's sort of entered the chat. When you talk about long-term for the Grizzlies, and you've got, John, Dez, Jaren, and Edey, and Marcus Smart's keeping a seat warm right now, but it's not maybe the long-term fit there. The Grizzlies sort of found 2 guys last season who are potential answers, right? And Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams are both sort of off the table right now. I do think Jaylen Wells has entered the conversation with those guys in the sense that he's a 6'7" wing. He's probably the most talented pure shooter of the 3. And he plays with some maturity and has at least some defensive potential. I think maybe the defense has been overstated a little bit based on Damian Lillard having a terrible game, but has some defensive potential. But I think even though I would put him in a category with Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson in terms of this long-term wing conversation, I think Gigi Jackson has the highest upside and Vince Williams is the best player today. And so I put Jaylen Williams like behind those 2 guys, even if I put him in the same conversation. So I'm telling you is that Vince Williams is a guy who should be starting on this team at some point this season.
Well, I mean, I've been there since December of 23.
Right.
I have lots of video evidence. Brandon Clark hasn't played very many minutes this season. I think he's been fine. Honestly, I thought he was pretty good in many of the most recent games. What are your first of all, what are your thoughts on Brandon Clark? And is he the only guy on the team right now who has an actual pitch count, or is just this strategic that he's playing 10 minutes a game?
Oh, I don't think it's strategic in the sense of you think you're better with someone else than Brandon Clark necessarily in those minutes. I think it's clearly related to injury recovery and where he's at physically. I haven't talked to anyone about that specifically, but that's clear to me.
Yeah.
The team has been good with him on the floor.
Yeah.
I think that's been better than his actual play, but I do think there's a difference between regaining your pop athletically and finding a rhythm. I think he's found a pretty good rhythm in some of these games. I don't think the pop is back, and I don't know whether it'll be back. And the question for Brandon Clark is, if you can't be what you were before physically, can you still be an effective player with what you are now? And I think the answer to that is a maybe. I think he's still got touch. He's still got smarts. He still has a good feel for the game. He still knows how to move around John Morant and Jaren Jackson and fit in. And I think he's been pretty effective in a lot of his time, even if he doesn't look like the old Brandon Clark. There have been times. There's one time when someone tried to throw an alley-oop and he just said, "Nope, it didn't go up."
Yeah.
And so I am concerned about him getting back to what he was before. I'm concerned about, even before injury, he was a guy who barely played 20 minutes a game. Like he would not play heavy minutes even before the injury. Right. So you take a guy who they were reluctant to play more than 20 minutes before this injury. It's probably not shocking they're reluctant to play more than 12 now. My hope is over the course of the season that he'll be able to build up a little bit more. They'll be more comfortable playing him more, because I do think, as exciting as some of the Jay Huff minutes have been, I think even at 80% Brandon Clark is a better all-around basketball player for the team than what Jay Huff is. And I think Jay Huff is there soaking up minutes they don't feel comfortable giving to Brandon Clark right now.
Yeah, I don't know what my hope or expectation for Jay Huff is, because he's been so good. And I keep thinking, like, where's that 3-point
Jay Huff
percentage going to level off at?
I think Jay Huff is a great find on a minimum contract as your fifth big. And I think with Brandon Clark having not been able to play heavy minutes, and with Zach Edey sort of coming along slowly, it's been a godsend for them.
Yeah.
But I think Jay Huff makes noisy plays. And I think the noisiness of his good plays sort of can mislead about the totality of his game. I think the coaches see that. That's why he didn't play in the second half last night.
Right. The noisy plays being like the highlight plays are all you remember. Yeah.
3-pointers, block shots off the rim, reverse dunks. But I don't think he's very good defensively other than the blocks, you know? And so I think he is correctly situated on the roster as the fifth big. And I think he's a good guy to have in that role.
Zaire Williams undefeated against the Grizzlies in his career, 2-0.
Dylan Brooks take a back seat.
Dylan Brooks is 5-1 against the Grizzlies.
Right. Hey, not undefeated. Not like Zaire.
Kyle Anderson's 5-2. Will the Grizzlies ever have a better overall team record than one of Kyle Anderson's teams?
I got a chart on the wall.
I got a chart. I can't wait till we play Roddy. Did we play Roddy last year? Did we play the Suns after the trade deadline last year? I don't remember. Finally, Chris, who's your bet? Who comes back first? Bane, Smart, or the Bug, Vince Williams?
I'm going to go with the Bug reluctantly, because there's an actual, he will be back. We have been told he will be back. It's not open-ended. Yeah. I'm not as much of a conspiracy theorist on Grizzlies injury stuff as a lot of the fan base is, but I don't know if I trust an open-ended designation to end sooner rather than later, you know? Yeah. And so I'm going to say maybe Vince Williams is back a little bit before the other two.
I had really gotten off my conspiracy kick on the Grizzlies injury report, but then with Vince Williams's update being 6 weeks later when they said it was going to be 4 weeks, and then it being 2 to 4 weeks when it was 6 weeks after the thing. And so now I was like, wait, why can't we just get these normal? And then with the week to weeks, I'm like, week to week, what does that even mean?
The problem is that the on-ramp is so long.
The ramp is so long.
And Vince Williams at least seems to be on the ramp right now. It's a long journey to get on the road, but he's on the ramp. And I don't know that Bane and Smart are on the ramp yet.
Based on what I've read online, Luke Kennard did 5-on-5 practices a week ago.
I don't understand. I really don't understand.
I'm not even a huge Luke Kennard believer defender. I'm not sure I want him to play over Scottie Pippen Jr.
I mean, here's my thing on that. Taylor, and it was never an official team statement. It was Taylor Jenkins in a pregame thing, right? The moment when Taylor Jenkins said Luke is cleared for full contact in practice and he's ramping up, right?
Yeah.
That statement happened before the Bane and Smart injuries. I would think if Luke Kennard had reached that point and then those two injuries happened, you grease the ramp a little bit, right? Like you increase the speed limit on the ramp.
Yeah.
And that has not happened.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, Chris, thank you for coming on this episode. All you listeners out there, go check out Chris's work over at the Daily Memphian. And Chris, I look forward to you coming on again.
All right. Thanks, Keith.